Well, I
Hi,
got my
everyone.
I was
Good
just saying,
evening.
I got my back porch on, so yeah.
Okay, no problem. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. Well, on today's show, we've got a very interesting guest. Last time he was on was 2 years ago. His name is Robert Leithrman. We're going to talk about the Bluff Creek Project, the Patterson Gimlin Bigfoot film site, A Journey of Rediscovery. It's about a book. It's about the looking into it, the case again, after all these years again. Because there's many people out there say, it wasn't Bigfoot or was it? And it's still going on to this day. So we'll be talking about that today. Can we please welcome Robert to the show? Hello there.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been almost 2 years since I talked to you last time, but I guess a lot's going on, but yet not a lot's going on. It depends what area, but yeah, at the Bluff Creek Project thing, we're still pretty active out there. I just talked to you earlier about the big fair they have. Well, it's more like a gathering called Bigfoot Days in Willow Creek, but
Oh, yeah.
it's not DAYS, it's DAZE because it gets pretty hot there and a lot of drinking goes on. So there is Bigfoot Days. There's a bunch of booths out there, and they offer us a chance to set our booth up. So we started doing that about 4 years ago. It's kind of different, but it usually gets pretty hot. So we got a little pop up. We sit there and we have a couple tables laid out. We have a bunch of casts and pictures, and basically we just talk to people about Bigfoot in general and the Bluff Creek Project, what our group does, and it's kind of nice. We get to meet new friends, get to make a few enemies, discussions, and it's kind of interesting because sometimes you start talking about the Patterson film and everything, people look at you like what. So I pull out the frame 352 and I just point to it, and they go, "Oh, okay, I understand." So they say picture's worth 1,000 words. So a picture of 352, that's what people are used to seeing. So we have some great talks and we keep them updated on what we're working on. And they used to ask us to do the judging competition for the Bigfoot screams. So we did that a few times, but it's kind of a tough job because you sit there like right in front of the speaker and you get to pop up your, whether it's a 1 to 10,
Oh, my God.
but with the speakers right there. So you kind of want to put earmuffs on, but that's kind of disrespectful. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
right there. Sometimes you feel like your hair is getting blown back when they're screaming into the microphone, but we're glad we didn't do it this year. We were expecting it, but it's like you're expecting it, but you're like, I don't want to sit there and get yelled at again. And then when they don't use you, you're like, how come you didn't call us? So that's been pretty fun. We've been doing that, and also we've been doing try something different. Is at the Willow Creek Museum. It's in downtown. It's called the China Flat Museum.
Hmm.
Every second Sunday of the month during the summer, which it's like July, August, September, and October, we usually set up a booth in the back where we can answer questions. People get to walk into the museum, and then they get to come in the back and see us with our tables all laid out and some casts, and then they get to meet the Bluff Creek Project guys. Sometimes it's just me, but sometimes it's a few of us, and that part's kind of neat because you get to meet a lot of interesting people. Of course, they all have stories. It's always good to hear the stories.
Oh,
And
of course it is.
oh yeah,
Yeah, there might be new stories to be told.
oh yeah, it's like I need to put a little sign up here. Uh, the story booth, because everybody has stories, and sometimes you get caught up in these stories and they go for on forever. And then you have a bunch of people, and then when it's just you, it's like you're ignoring all those other people that have questions. Some will wait, and then they'll walk off. So I joked about having an egg timer. It's like, okay, give me your story in 5 minutes. Click.
When we talk about the Patterson Gimlin, why is it the most debated piece of footage ever recorded?
It is pretty debatable. Well, it's getting that way. There's been some new talk about, I forget the name of the movie that's going to come out. It's supposed to be out in October, maybe, or November. It's supposed to be a footage that was filmed that was a test run for the Patterson film. Now, that's just what we've heard. Now, hardly anybody has got to see it, but everybody has, when I say everybody, but a lot of people have come up with their opinions based on hearsay of what people were saying. And I watched the guy on Facebook tell the story. It sounded convincing,
Mm.
but I had a bunch of questions too. And I know a lot of people who know more about the subject have questions, but they talk about a lot of things, and I haven't seen the footage, so to share it would be hearsay. But some of those things that they talked about seemed a pretty one-sided thus far. I don't know if they consulted the trackways because I didn't ask the guy who was on the Facebook talking about it. But that's one of the things that'd be interesting if it shows up on the footage. But and another question people ask us was, since we're the Bluff Creek Project, is um oh, so what else you guys gonna go look for? The Loch Ness monster? I mean, is it all over? You know, they proven that the film is fake and everything. So what are you gonna do with all your free time? But as the Bluff Creek Project is we our goal was to find the location that was misplaced. And whether you believe in Bigfoot or whether you believe the Patterson film is real or not, the location is real. And in our research, we found that location, proved beyond reasonable doubt that it was there. So whatever happened there happened at that location in Bluff Creek in the bottom
Right.
of Delnor County. So does it affect our opinion on the subject, whether the film is a real film or not a real film? Well, it's a real film. Its question is what's on it. And it's not a video because it wasn't a video. It was a 60 millimeter reel to reel film, a silent film that they recorded. And part of me says, yeah, that's bad, you know, but the whole phenomena isn't resting on the shoulders of one piece of evidence, which is the film. That's just one aspect of it that people, it has
Mm.
convinced many, many people of the phenomena being real by watching that footage. And in their mind's eye, they see the fluctuation of muscles, they see the coloration. That's what they see. And it's convinced them that Patty exists. But you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So that's just one aspect of the evidence. And being at ground zero there, I got a chance to see it. I got a chance to touch the sand, look at the trees. It's kind of gives you a different perspective of the area there. And yeah, I like going there. It's a peaceful place.
I
And
bet it is as well. What made you start? What made you start to rediscover it again and go back there?
oh,
'Cause there were quite a few of you, weren't they, who went there to have a
yeah.
look?
Yeah, well, first it's kind of interesting story that like the backstory of it is I've been involved with the BFRO originally since 1999. I got involved with doing research, I got to be curator for them. I got involved with investigating sightings on my own. I got involved with interviewing people. And then I got involved with leading expeditions through the BFRO. Basically, is making sure people come back alive, entertaining them, providing information, showing them what to look for, what not to look for. So I was one of a few people that were doing that on the West Coast. And I did that for many, many years. And then it got to about, I guess I kind of got tired of doing that, kind of backed out about probably 2016 on that. But anyhow, but prior to that, I got to a point where when we go on these expeditions, we had all this camera equipment. And the whole idea of the camera equipment, like the Sony 100 video cameras or the night vision stuff, that you can actually screw onto the lens of it and you can record it onto the camera looking through the lens, which is kind of
Yeah,
cool. But we had all the stuff in case we would see something or in case something would suddenly appear. But I got to a point where I thought it'd be kind of interesting if we filmed the people doing all this stuff because that's where the real story is. The people going out and doing all this stuff. So on the expedition stuff, I'd be out with the camera everywhere because it was on loan to me, and
yeah,
I'd film and interview people and do a bunch of stuff. And I did that for a bit. And then I would return it all back at the end of the expedition. Here's your camera. And I wasn't smart enough. I'm not a techie guy. So taking that footage off the hard drive of the camera, I assumed somebody else was going to do that. And they would
yeah,
file it.
yeah,
No, you take the camera, you say, thank you very much. And then you pass it to the next expedition, which is probably within 2 weeks or a month. And then they would, oh, look, there's stuff on here, delete, and they would put stuff on it. And so it was all gone. So I started kind of complaining about that. I go, well, how am I supposed to do this? And to Matt Moneymaker's credit, he kind of said, you can do this. So they loaned to me Wally Hersham, who passed away, and Matt Moneymaker said, here's the camera, here's the night attachment, go collect footage. So that's like giving me a camera and saying, you can go anywhere where you want, film anything. So that was my new big thing. So starting in 2009, I got crazy with the camera and started filming all sorts of stuff. And then I started learning how to edit. I never thought I could do that, but I learned how to edit. So now I can
Oh, brilliant.
take the footage and put it into a saving thing, and then I could take the thing and edit the thingy and then put it so people can see it. So I started doing that. So I got crazy with that from 2009 to 2010ish, and then I was looking for material. And so I remember my conversation with the guy named Stephen Strufert, who passed away relatively recently,
Yeah.
and from Bigfoot Books. And I remember my time with him. Now I'm going to flash back to 2007. So I flashed back to 2007, and it was the 40th anniversary, and Stephen was working on an article for a local paper, and I was with the BFRO. So I got to talking to Stephen. It was pretty cool to talk to him about different things. And the next thing I know, it's like I was chatting with Steven, and then from there we went over to a place called Louse Camp, which is near Bluff Creek. And then I'd stay up really late. I'd stay up really late, and we talk with Steven around the fire, and I learned a lot of stuff. And one of the things he talked about was that the film site was like being misplaced. This is in 2007. Yeah, at that point, I can care less because it wasn't a big deal for me. Like the Patterson film wasn't the make or break thing for me. It was just another location, but I was involved with all the other aspects of it.
Yeah.
And so we sat around. I go, okay, that sounds interesting. Nothing ever happened. Now I'm going to flash back again to 2003. Now, in 2003, I got a chance to speak at the Bigfoot Symposium that was just out of Willow Creek at elementary school. Well, since I was the Bigfoot Ranger and I was giving interpretive talks at the time, Matt Moneymaker asked me to give a talk for the lunch. So I was Friday lunch dinner, salmon dinner, and I would do the same program I did with the parks. A bunch of slides, some tabloid magazines, make fun of the whole thing,
Yeah.
and there's your program. And that's when I got to meet some of the players. But the film site thing still wasn't a big deal for me. So now I'm going back into time, go to 2007. I'm meeting with Steven. It sounds interesting, but I don't have time for this. And plus, I don't have any camera, right? I haven't been blessed with a camera yet. So now we get to 2009. I'm like, I got a camera. I'm looking for footage. I'm busy. Now I get to 2010. I got a brilliant idea. I go, why don't I interview Steven about this missing film site thing?
Yeah.
So that's how we got started. So showed up at Steven's Bigfoot Books in Willow Creek with camera in hand, and I walk in there, and it's like, okay, where is he? But if you've never been to the Steven's Bigfoot Books, is the door is always open when he's there. The music's always blasting. And when you walk in, you see walls of books and bookcases. So I remember walking and going, oh my goodness. And I'm looking around as these walls of books. And then I'm looking for Steven. I look at, and there's his head pops up behind the computer screen in the kitchen area. And there he is. So I'm walking and talking and I'm videotaping as
Yeah.
I'm going in. And then I guess I kind of pissed off Steven because I didn't ask permission to film him. And I'm like, we talked about this, but we got over it pretty quick. And then now it was PowerPoint time. So I sat right next to Steven, and he had his computer, and he went down his computer like it was a PowerPoint, and he starts talking about all the aspects of the film site, every speck of it. And a lot of it I was unaware of. Some of it I was, but didn't care. A lot of it was I was unaware that the controversy was that bad about whether or not it was even filmed there, whether or not the film was real, whether or not who did this, all these aspects. He went down the list, and I thought it was pretty intriguing because now I'm actually listening. So I filmed that. I filmed Steven. When we put it up at the BFR YouTube channel, it was the Bluff. It was a Bluff Creek Film Site Project was the original name. And every time we go out and do crazy stuff, I would edit it and put it up there. So we have about
Right.
72 videos up there somewhere in cyberspace. Anyhow, so I went back to the first part, and then he told me about this guy. His name is Ian Carton. He says you'll like him. He's like a Boy Scout, you know. He's like a survivalist Boy Scout, and so those were the two people that were pushing to find this place. And those Stephen Stroifer and Ian Carton, they met in 2000, and I want to say 2009. I think that was the Yakima Roundup, and that's where they met. And I was there too, but I didn't get to meet Ian yet, but I knew Stephen, and so I, I go out and I do some searching. My job is just to record them, right, and take some video footage and do something
Yeah.
with it. So I'm going out before them to a place I've been to many, many times. I would go there because it was approximately some location here was the film site, but it was pretty. I'd guarantee bear tracks. So I'd go out and try to pour plaster casts from bear tracks. This was downstream from what's called um, his name will come here, NK Davis site. It was downstreams from the NK Davis site,
Right.
and but at the time I didn't know it was the NK Davis site, but I learned that from Steven. And I'd go there to film. So now I'm now recapping my old stuff, looking for signs of a possible film site there. And and I remember looking all over the place, and I was just trying to go by the evidence, and it didn't seem to make sense there, but based on what Stephen had said. But that's okay. So then I met up with Ian. So now I get to meet Ian, and now I'm with Stephen, and then I'm number three guy. I'm only number three guy because I'm filming and I'm asking, and I'm leaving it up to them to talk. But I had a bunch of questions now. Now I
Yeah.
had time to think about it. I was asking questions, and so I was kind of setting them up, and they would answer it. But that's how it went. So it got to a point where I found it so intriguing that I became member number three. So Stephen and Ian, they did. I don't know if it's Steven's idea first or Ian's idea first, but they're the two guys. I'm there
Yeah.
to film them. Now I'm a member of the team. Now I drank the punch. They go, here's the red pill, the blue pill. Which one do you want? You know, it's like I
Wow.
took. I've been passing that blue pill up for years. So finally I decided to take it. And so I decided that, yeah, so now it's a threesome and now we're trying to figure this out. I'm still filming. Now I'm part of the process. Now, if you want to vote, when you have two people, you can't come up with a good answer, right? So you needed three people. So me being the third one was actually helpful for the decision of what we're going to do next. Ian would say this, Steve would say this, and I go, okay, I'm going this way. And then, because, 2-1, we're doing that. I know sometimes Ian didn't like that, but that's just kind of how it went. And
Yeah.
so that process went on for a couple of years. And in the process of that, we were looking at the evidence and we're trying to figure out, based on the descriptions of all the footage and all the written information, based on the stories, we had to figure out what fits best. Well, Stephen had 5 sites on his list. He had the downstream, the farthest downstream, which was considered the MK Davis location, and that story goes back a little bit to 2003 when everybody was confused as to where the site was. It
Right.
was a Sunday road trip, and he asked people where it was, and they were going, "It's over here." So that was the Sunday thing. So evidently he had heard from somebody who was downstream, said it might be a good place. So Inca Davis put all his eggs in that basket. So therefore, it's the Inca Davis site. Then you go upstream a little bit towards where the bat boxes are. That we consider to be the boy. When you get over 60, sometimes you got to remember all these names.
Yes,
Sometimes
I
you
know.
rattle them off. Sometimes you have to think about it. But the Peter Burns site, and based on stories of, he used to take people there, they would park down there by the bat boxes when you could, and he would show them that tree there. And based on some of the people we've met, that's the location. So he gets full credit for that. But Peter Byrne had also been to the film site, so he should have known where it was. So maybe out of memory, like a lot of the other people, or out of convenience, that became the site that he was known for. Next
Right.
up is you're going to cross the creek. As soon as you cross the creek, you're in the what's called the Gulch, and we give that credit to Christopher Murphy. And Christopher Murphy was there in 2003, so he was there when a lot of people were unsure. But a lot of the stuff he has for his books, Meet the Sasquatch and No. Was it Meet the Bigfoot? No, the Bigfoot, whatever. Maybe it's just Sasquatch. Anyhow, so I met him in 2003 in the bleachers before he had the book published. So I got to meet him early. But when his book came out in 2004, he talked about the location. 2005 or six later on, he came out with a second book, and he had this location marked on the book, and it had the film site at the gulch area there, but it was farther up the side of the hill. So that's not the location.
Yes. No.
And in order to have a location, you need to have a distance within a range, certain artifact trees within compass direction,
Yeah.
and a width and everything else. Well, the gulch was a place where the river had eaten away quite a bit of that area.
So
So
it changed quite a bit then.
it was so changed that anything will work there. And you could say, well, I just got washed away. And how can we disprove it? Well, you can if you go with the back field with the trees and stumps and locations and distance you need to have. So um, Christopher Murphy was trying to get it right. So I can't give him a hard time about it. It's just that the information he had gotten wasn't quite going to work. The next place was that we called the Daniel Perez site, which was just upstream in the area that was still partially overgrown but pretty open. And it was starting to look like it could be the film site there. Reason we gave Daniel Perez credit there, because in 2003, when they were all looking for places and it was being filmed and used in a show, he was sitting there going, "This is the place." So he gets credit for that. He agrees now it's not the place, but we gave him credit for it back in 2010 before he agreed with us. Before a lot of people agreed with us, we needed a name and a label, and he got it. So
Yes,
that
you
was
did.
his
Yeah.
credit. And then you go farther up from there, and there's a place where Stephen had asked a lot of people who had suggested these 5 locations. The only one who sent something back with a stamp of approval on it was Cliff Brackman. And Cliff Brackman had topo map, and he put an orange oval over that general area, and he says he believes it's there. Now I'm going to flash back in time again. And in the 2007, I remember hanging out with Cliff and Bobo, and they brought me up there. If you think in 2007, that was the 40th anniversary, and we all went to Laos, and then we all were taken to the general area. And at the time, you could drive all the way down there at the time
Right.
in 2007. And so we went down there. I remember walking down and having Bobo told me, "Oh, we think it's over this way. This area could be." According to Stephen, he had heard that Bobo felt that the Gulch um, was a significant place. Anyhow, so I went through the process of looking there. I remember a Cliff walking me in the backside of the hills because you couldn't see much from the river, and the
No.
bars were overgrown. So I remember bushwhacking from the backside of the hills, going all the way upstream. And I remember him showing me some big trees and going, "These are probably them," but I can't remember exactly where it was at the time because it was all changed and overgrown. Those could be the very same places he took me. But he's the one who marked on that map that this is probably where it is. He ended up being right. And Perez also asked Rene de Hinden before he passed to mark a map with the location. And Perez puts it in his book, and he has a blue X in his book. So he had the right location, but I don't think he knew how to read the maps. And so there's two possibilities for that. Anyhow, so those are the 5. So we did a little checking here and there. I used a GPS uh, unit
Good
with
idea.
a friend that passed away, and we went back and forth, and we gridded this area out. And it was like, where are you? I don't know. And then when I looked at his GPS, it was like a checkers grid all over the place. And this is at the first map site farther down, MK Davis location. Things didn't make sense because the distances weren't right, the artifacts weren't where they're supposed to be. It's supposed to be a big flat terrace, and it wasn't. It was multiple terrace. There's a big V in the back, but there was no stumps that would match it. There were some stumps, but they were uneven ground. They weren't in the combinations we're looking for. So therefore, off the list, make that decision on that one. And
Yeah.
then, of course, go down to the Peter Byrne. It doesn't work. It's lacking the distance and angles and trees, and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the Christopher Murphy area gulch didn't work because of the distance and angles north. And then you're back to the Perez thing. Landmarks weren't there. So Cliff was decision. So in 2000 and at the end of 2010, we had made our decision that we were going to go over and grid that place because it had enough stuff there to make it look like it could work. And we can't grid them all. There's not enough time and day. We couldn't do them all. So we figured that
Yeah.
one. So the next year when it started, it was time to do it. So what we did is when we picked that location, we picked a spot on the beach area, just down from what's called the Hindens X, which basically in the movie footage and at Hinnan's overview, which is in 1971, he took a shot from a photograph from the top of the hill, and on there it's the upper sandbar, and there's a lot of artifacts that were in the same frame as 352, but they were there. Some of the artifacts there, so we couldn't climb the top of the hill and take that same picture and match it because it's a forest now. It's overgrown. So we had to figure out some way to figure out that location and prove it. And the thing about you can't see the forest for the trees because it was overgrown. We had to crawl through in some areas following game trails, and all those sticks at eye level were tough. And so you're kind of stooped over going following game trails. And then
Mm.
every once in a while, you'll see a rotted stump or you'll see a decaying log that used to be there. And then in the very back, you see these big trees. They're kind of tucked away. And so we figured this is going to be our spot. So we started in 2011. We started at across the river, just south of we call it the Hindens X. We picked an alder tree and we took a northern compass bearing with a corrected declination. And we go, let's make our line. So we flagged it, we marked our starting point, and then we just went compass bearing. You can only go so far till you run into trees. So you have to mark that line.
Yeah.
Then you have to turn around and make sure you're still on a straight line. Then you go back, and then you have to continue on. If you have to go around something in the way, you have to take a 90, you go up, do a 90 back,
And
and
back
complete before
again.
you start again. If you're off, you're off. And so what we were doing was not perfect surveying work. It was a Ranger survey compass, but it was straight line. And I always tell people, one is a point, two is a line, and 3 points are direction. So we wanted direction. And so we're moving our way down, and we couldn't see very far. So you had to cut the view shed just like a tunnel so you could see as we're making our way following the compass bearings. And ever so far, we double backed. We did that till we ran into this hillside. We could go no further. And it wasn't a hillside, it was a terrace about 6 foot up and then flat. In the film, everybody thought that was a hillside in the background for frame
Mm.
352, but it
That's right.
wasn't. And we got to credit Inky Davis for figuring out by lighting up and darkening certain aspects that it was a slip face with a terrace with trees on it. And he was right about that. And so here we have this in front of us, but sitting just off to our left with this big old tree. And I go, look, it's a big tree. Could this be the big tree? And it's a big tree, and it had like these little, almost like acorn holes in it, right? And it's right there. And then next to this big tree is a big old maple. This is in September. So when we did this survey, so it's just starting to change a little yellows in this big old
Oh,
maple.
yeah.
And there it was. And then there's a bunch of other tree stuff over there, which, whatever. And so we're like, okay, so this is our north-south axis line. So the next step was to find the middle of that and do an east-west axis line. So I forget how far, how many feet it was 300 and something feet. So we took half that, and then we ran an east-west direction off our compass. The west direction went all the way to the hillside that goes up, and there was this three-pronged maple tree that was partially rotting nearby. So that became our east-west uh, um, um, thingy. And then we went all the way back to the center again, and then we went to the east side. That's a meridian now. We went all the way down. You got to the edge where the upper terrace drops off about 10 feet into the creek.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then we had to keep going. And then we went a little bit, probably 15 or 20 to the side of this hill. And then we marked that. So now we have these four quadrants, right? That wasn't good enough because you still can't see what's in them. So now we had to divide these 4 quadrants up into 30-foot squares. So you know what that meant? I mean, 30 feet, another line, north south. 30 feet, another line, north south. And we
Oh
did
my
that
God.
right up to the edge of the drop off because there's no point in going below that. And we stopped that. So now you got these lines. Now each of these lines have to be broken into squares, right? So
Yeah.
now we go back to the main meridian and we do it again on the left. And then you have to cut them into squares. So now we have 30-foot squares. And each 30-foot square, in order to keep us honest, is we put flags in. So every 30 foot was a flag, and that was the corner piece. And you had your northwest quadrant, and you had your
Yeah.
northeast quadrant, you had your southwest east quadrant, you had your southwest quadrant. And and so in those quadrants, you now had to draw in these artifacts. So now that all 4 corners are marked with a blue flag, we now needed to draw in the artifacts. Now we didn't need to survey points and do triangulation based on edge corners to get exact locations. We just need within the 30-foot square approximately where are the logs, the stumps, or the decaying material. And in some cases later on, we started drawing in the big trees because that 71 aerial view I talked about, this 1971. Well,
Oh yeah.
there's trees growing in there. So if we can match those trees in positions on this grid, that would be helpful to tie in the 71 to the frame 352. But first we have to tie in the overview map thing. So we did. So we're drawing these artifacts in. That took us a few days. And then I even had to come back like the next week before they closed the gates around October, or the end of October. They closed the gates. And the reason they closed the gates is because there's a fungus that kills the Port Orford cedars, and it's waterborne, so it travels with the mud when it gets
Ah,
when it
right.
rains. They don't have a rule for all the animals and birds that transport them everywhere,
No.
but they do for the humans. So they limit access. And so that was a time frame, and I wanted to have it done. I didn't want to be like scooped. You remember you're almost finished, and then you say, "Oh, I better quit." And then winter comes, and next thing you know, somebody's got a map all done, and you're like, "We did all the work, but now." So I didn't
Correct.
want that to happen. But then I want it to be accurate. So I want to make sure it's done right. So that was the push part. So once we completed that, I started taking my notes and drawing in. Well, I have to say this part. Math wasn't my strong point, and I forgot about the plus minus minus plus areas. They call it algebra. And so I was all my blocks actually had a name and
Oh
an
yeah.
alphabet. And Rowdy, he goes, "What are you doing?" I'm going, "I'm trying to keep it so I can understand it." He goes, "Well, I don't understand what you're doing." He goes, "Don't you remember this math stuff?" You're like, "Oh yeah." So we fixed that, and that was easier to operate. Now you have a Y and X index, and you can each point had a number and a label. So anyhow, going back to the story, and so I drew the map, fixed the map, and then what I did with that is I took the to hand to 71 and I circled all the artifacts, and then I matched them on our grid map. And then we sent that to Daniel Perez. I should say Steven sent it to Daniel Perez after I sent it to Steven. And of course, after that moment in time, to Daniel's credit, he says, "You guys have found it. You found it. Good
Oh,
job." It's like, yeah. But it took time now. It took time for us to convince people that we had located it because people were convinced that it was destroyed. You can't find it. People were convinced that it was an open sandbar, that they couldn't understand the concept of trees growing it in, filling it in. So everybody's looking for this big open sandbar and not a big open sandbar with trees in the background. Yeah, and that's not going to work. That's why we really had to break it down. So after that, we convinced a lot of people that it was there, and it took a little while, but it takes a little bit of science and research and math. Like my mom told me, there's math and everything, and I believe it now. And so we got that all squared away, and then of course once we got it located, then we had to prove it to Bill Munns. We didn't have to prove it to ourselves anymore, so we set Bill Mums up to come on down. So this is 2012. We walked Bill Munns all the way down to the film site, and then we let him loose. it was kind of fun because we walked him down and then we said, okay, you're on your own. It's that way. We let him go. We just sat back and we talked and watched him disappear. And he had his charts and stuff, his secret charts, He's around, he's looking around. He was gone for probably 15 minutes and he's right over there, just over there.
Yeah.
Funny, he came back and he had the biggest smile on his face. And it's like, Bill and his trees. Yeah, and he confirmed it, but of course, he had to tell us. Well, I had my aces in the hole. We had this Lauren Hardy tree on the far side. That was the indicator to prove that beyond reasonable doubt, you guys nailed it, and you guys nailed it. Congratulations. But we knew of those trees, but we had so many things marked on our map. We said, yeah, there's trees there. We didn't need to go after. Well, was it 27, 26? I have to do my toes and count the letters in the English alphabet. We filled every number up. We had to start doubling up numbers and doubling up letters, and it's just like this process took a little bit. And finally we said, okay, this is probably it. And that's when we went up and we announced it and it was all good. But since then, we've been taking people there, maintaining the trails. In 2012, we also started putting cameras out because we were curious as to what animals would go there.
Yeah.
We first started, yeah, we first started hiding the cameras, but remember I mentioned the place is closed because they shut the gates. It can
Yeah.
be anywhere from 7 to 8 months a year. It's closed, and our battery ups didn't last that long. Originally, when we put the cameras out, we had to run solar panels with hook into the cameras, and then we wanted to hide the cameras, but the snow and everything would push all the stuff down on them. And it got to the point where it wasn't worth the trouble on the off season that we decided we're just gonna metal case them to trees to see what we get. Well, in the process of doing that, in the first winter of 2012 and 2013, we got our first Humboldt Martin on camera. And that was a little weasel type animal that people thought was like, oh,
Yeah.
they're probably not here anymore. It comes to I saw one in 2007 when I brought my friend down. We rode our bikes down there from Louse Camp, and we're sitting on the beach recovering at Bluff Creek. And this went come walking over to check us out. As soon as it realized we were humans, it screamed and ran off. And I go, what kind of weasel is that? I didn't realize later till it was a Humboldt Martin, real specific to Oregon and California coastal forests. And it was really cool to have that. So that's another feather in our cap for being able to have photographic evidence of that. So now the big push now, we still show people the film site location who want to go there. We still answer questions. We still link around the site. We still try to figure out based on distance and camera apertures, the lenses, we still trying to figure out how tall Patty might have been. So that's one of the big projects that Rowdy Kelly has been leading in. And we've narrowed it down to either a 15 or a 20 millimeter lens. And we've changed locations a little bit. And what the process is kind of interesting because the film was taken 67. Whether it's Bigfoot or not, the film was taken in 67. And the location where Roger stood, who filmed it in 67, there's still a distance of where the artifacts are. And John Green did some measurements there, and so did Renee DeHinden. So we have approximately where Roger was through triangulation. 2 points form a triangle. And so because of that, we were able to figure out approximately where Roger was. So, and it's frame 352. You can't see everything as clearly because there's still a lot of trees in the way. But what we did to bring the artifacts out that are inside the 352 photograph is we put lights on them, bright lights, and we know exactly where they are according to the frame of the picture. And you can overlay them and you can figure out what the artifacts are location on it. So we know how to line up frame.
When you're doing that, could you take trees out as well then?
Well, it's a riparian environment and it's a Forest Service land. It's protected environment. We should not be removing trees from riparian habitat.
No.
What we've done is we've limbed up for view shed so we can see better. And that's what we go with. We go with branches that aren't in our way anymore, which allows us to see the distances a bit much better. And you still can't see certain things from there, but that's why the lights on the artifacts help. You're able to line everything up. We also built a platform out of down logs that were there so we
Good.
could stand on it and try to figure out where Roger would be standing at approximate height. Roger was 5'3", so he wasn't a tall guy. So we have a wooden platform that we stand on when we try to duplicate the 352 shot.
Exactly.
Yeah, and when you go to the film site, you'll see it or just next to the sign in we have for the public to sign in they were there. There's this platform, and that's what that's all about. And we're finding out the more we do experiments, that maybe we're going to have to extend that platform a little bit further out into the drop off where it's been washed away, because we maybe we need a little more distance in our figuring out. But here's the mathematical formula that could answer everybody's question, but it might not because we're still missing evidence. But
Yeah.
if you know the exact location where Roger was standing and the exact distance from where Roger was standing when he was filming to where Patty was standing, and you know the lens size, you can estimate the height of the individual mathematically. The problem we have is we don't know the exact location where Patty was in 352. We can guess based on lining things up.
Yeah, but that's not good enough, is it?
No, it's never good enough. And somebody got, I think it was Grover Krantz got the idea in some of the earlier frames when Patty's walking, she puts her back of her foot up. Well, based on the tracks that were casted at this location, claimed to be Patty's, there's a measurement. Now, if you take that measurement and you put it in that little picture thing of the foot, and you stand those little foots up, you can estimate the height. I think Grover Krantz did something similar to that, come up with maybe 6'7" ish. And then there's a stick laying there on the ground. And you can't tell exactly where it is according to Patty's position, but somebody has that stick and they measured it. So they were taking that stick, sticking it on end, and using that to measure Patty's height in the frame where the stick was seen.
Right.
Well, that's not as accurate. That's not 100% either. So it's just trying to figure it out. So even some of the pictures where you can't see the other foot to estimate how tall she's standing because you don't know how far down. You can estimate and guess how far down that part of the leg is till the bottom of the foot,
Oh, yeah,
or
that's
how deep in the
brilliant.
sand she is based on, whatever. Anyhow, so efforts have been made. So here's another effort by us where we're looking at that and we're trying to figure it out with using some math and something else. Now, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a mathematician, but I do know the height of that stump called Smiley Stump. It's 20 inches across when we first moved the vegetation to see it, and it's 40 inches tall. I think 41 inches tall or something around there. Well,
Right.
keep that in mind. And Patty is closer to the camera than that is. So when I sat there and looking at it and staring at it and then looking at it some more, Patty does not look like she's 6'7". She doesn't look like she's 7'3", like some people estimate. In my mind, just my opinion, and you know what that gets you. It's anywhere from 6 to 6'3" is what I'm thinking in my brain. I talked to other members of the group, like Roddy Kelly. He's putting it anywhere from 6'5" to 6'3" ish. And Patty was with I guess one of the film crews that had went through there, and they did a LiDAR approach to it based on where she could have been, the stamp or artifacts where
Yeah.
Roger would have been in the thing, and they come up with a 6'3" ish formula. And now all those low numbers are well within the average, not the average, but well within human size, except for the girth. That changes a lot of things, but height wise. So the answer is still in search of. People are speculating, us included, and I want to emphasize that we're speculating. We're trying to use math and familiarity with the location because we've been there a lot, of trying to figure out approximately. Like I could take you there today. Of course, it would have to wait till you fly over and stuff. But
Oh,
if
yeah,
I
yeah.
if I were to take you there, I could bring you within approximately 5 yards where we feel Patty was standing in frame 352, based on the distances between the left side of the artifacts of her and the right side of the artifacts,
Right.
and approximate location where Roger would have been, and just trying to line everything up. Because we can line up artifacts that are still there and show you where Roger would be standing and the angle of he'd be standing. The only hard part comes is trying to figure out the distances of a lot of these shots and stuff in between. We can get the wedge down. It's just the
Yeah.
distance in a straight line. That's the challenging point. And that's where you try to put Patty in that straight line. That's where the challenge comes. Yeah. So
Quite hard, isn't it? You know, you've done all this work, and things could change or whatever, and so this new film's going to be out when? October.
it's all hearsay when it's going to come out in October, but they're talking about another showing. This is hearsay scuttlebutt. A possible showing in October. And I don't know exactly where that would be either, but that's one more thing. And it's just more people could see it and more people could come to their own conclusions. Uh, this is my opinion, but it would be nice that if both sides were consulted equally and allowed to debate each other's evidence. And
Yeah,
then we, as the viewers, can make our decision based on the best attorney.
yeah, exactly. You know, do you think the mystery says more about human curiosity than about Bigfoot itself? Then,
You talk about this film.
yeah.
Well, I don't know the guys. I've never talked to any of them. I don't know their motivation why they would do that. If people are we're all biased in one form or another. It depends where our where we put our hearts, right? Well, if somebody feels that it's fake, they would naturally put up information to justify their position and try to prove their position based on the evidence they present. If I wanted to say it's not, if the film was real, I'd go out of my way just where all the scuttlebutt and the common talk and try to base my evidence to prove that fact. And if I was going to present an interesting story of two sides, I would have to put both sides in there to balance it out. It wouldn't be one sided. But the interesting thing is as I don't know if the people who are producing this, if they feel Bigfoot's real or if they feel it's all fake. I don't know the position they're coming from.
Right,
And we'll know once we watch the footage. Because then,
exactly.
yeah, we'll know if our sides have been covered thoroughly enough. So if I'm going to produce something, I kind of want to make sure I have my homework, all my
Done your
ducks lined
homework.
up, because I don't want to misrepresent anything or misinform. And I don't want to really embarrass myself by being totally wrong. Like going back to my research or our research for the film site, and I'm trying to I'm trying to construct a map, and I have people on my team tell me it's good enough. It's this place, and I'm going, no, it's not. You know, put your name on the bottom of this map, and then we'll talk about it. It's like I want to make sure beyond reasonable doubt that everything has been covered to a point where reasonable people will come up with a reasonable decision on it. So I I don't know the story much on the film. So I if I see it, I will know more, and I'll have my biases too going in. And if I am more of the existence thereof, I'm probably going to favor that evidence more than the not saw. But I want to be reasonable and I want to be fair. And with that said, if I have to make a decision, I want it based on facts. Now, is there a possibility that the film could be faked? Yes. Is there a possibility that it could be real? Yes.
Yeah.
I have to be in my position. I have to be level-headed about both sides. That's my opinion, how I want to present it. So
Mm.
could I be swayed to say yes or no? I can based on the evidence, and I want to be proven beyond reasonable doubt either way. But I know it's hard to do 100% of anything on the subject, but I want to get a good percentage. People ask me, go, well, do you believe in Bigfoot? I'm still waiting for that question, but I think I
Ah,
answered last 2 years ago. So I come up with a nice answer now. Now, if I am really involved in the subject matter and you want a yes or no answer from me, to be a yes, I need 51%. To be a no, I need 49. So with that premise in mind, I go through life investigating and following up, and I am convinced with 51% of the evidence I deal with that something's very odd and unusual about it. And then I have 49% of the evidence which I can disprove or I don't agree with. So I'll keep it simple. Yes, there's a possibility of it, but so thus far for me. If I was 49 and 51, I would say no. But then I go look for Loch Ness Monster or something, or maybe go chase all the wild cats you guys got in the backcountry you guys have to deal with.
Yeah, well, there were a couple of questions here. I think you've done one with Stephen who said, why is, in your opinion, have no bodies or definite proof of Sasquatch ever be found? And then there's another one. What does Robert think Patty was? A flesh and blood creature or something else?
That's an interesting question because the more I spend time out in the outdoors, snooping around, the more I run into weird stuff, things you can't explain, odd sounds, odd feelings, odd everything. And I can see how people would go that way, following that because it's unusual and they can't figure it out. So yeah, I found some tracks. I found hairs, if you want to call them that. I've
Yeah,
had rocks tossed at me. I've been screamed at. I've even heard the samurai talk that we've heard so much about. And of course, there's the feelings of being followed. I've had that experience too. It's like you're walking along and you hear something walking parallel to you, so you stop walking, and it takes a couple steps and it stops,
yeah,
and then you wait, you hear nothing, and then you walk again. This time you're listening, and you hear it again. This time it's closer, and you're going down. It's paralleling you. You get to a certain point where you're like, okay, so you do a quick half step to being tricky, and then you hear a couple steps and it stops. It's silence again. And now you decide, I think I have places to be. And you're trying to get there. And so you keep walking, you hear it again, it's even closer yet. And this one spot I got to where the road makes a 270-degree turn. And then within about 15 minutes of fast walking, I'll make it to where I'm camped at the berm. And I stopped there, and I'm expecting to see whatever it is. So I drew my handgun. I usually carry in my pack, and I'm
yeah,
thinking, we'll see what's going on with this. And then it gets to the point where I expect it to cross the ravine because I can see that. It doesn't. It stops and it turns and goes downhill in my direction. Now it's more of a steeper downhill. It's going a little faster. Of course, I reholstered. I pulled my my bear spray out, and I started walking back towards my camp. I'm thinking, it's just down there. It's just down there. So instead of holding my ground and staying there to see what it was, I decided, since I'm by myself in the middle of nowhere, that I will head back to camp. And a lot of people sit there and say, I would have waited and see what it was. Yeah, I'm a real brave guy. I'm just gonna head back to camp. So I walk back to camp, and then within 5 minutes, I'm heading back, and I hear nothing else. My friends I've been waiting for, after I made my cell call at the cell site way at the top, they come
yeah.
driving down the road. And so I ask them, you guys see a bear? They go, no, we didn't see anything. I'm like, okay. And then I changed the subject. And a friend of mine was reading the book. I put the story in the book, was reading about that. And he goes, I didn't know that happened to you that day, because he was one of the guys who was in the car. He goes, why didn't you say anything? I go, I don't want you guys to think I was just kind of a wimp, a scaredy cat. And it was more than my imagination at that point. But I didn't want you to have that reputation of being, a scaredy
I've
cat.
heard stories like that before when somebody's been walking a path and every foot they've done, they've heard it outside of them in the field. Even over here, it's happened.
Yeah, so it's something that sounds like bipedal, walking on 2 feet. And it didn't care how much noise was made when it was walking, but now all of a sudden it cares when I stop. And bears they can't see very far away. They smell, they have really
You
keen
can
sense of
smell, can't
smell.
they?
But in terms of sight, it's just a coincidence. Once luck, twice skill. It's like, why did it do it the second time? And I wasn't, third time's the charm. I was going to wait the third time, especially when it picked up its cadence and was coming directly down to the place I was in the road. And so I, I I'll never know to this day unless I stayed there and waited. I was in Cra-
Exactly.
I was in Craig National Park, and I was a seasonal ranger there, and I would take my days off. So I forget the name of the trail, but it's off the Rim Drive. It's like 23-mile road around the rim, and there's a spur trail that heads south towards the Panhandle, which is the skinny thing on the bottom. I remember hiking in. I probably went about 7, 8 miles, and then I got to the point where it's getting late, and I got to a slight little clearing, and I had stopped. I heard something very large walking in my direction, breaking stuff, and it was getting closer. And instead of waiting for it, because all the big trees there are lodgepole pines and not very big. I turned around and headed back out just as the sound was approaching that one spot. I mean, it's probably the second best decision I made right there, because I know we have elk up there. We used to follow them around with collared elk with their radio gear. We used to check on the elk, but
Oh,
at that
yeah.
point, I'm like, I'm not waiting. So I walked all the way. I just walked back up the trail with double time, looking over my shoulder, and eventually I made it back to my turn off before it got dark, and I walked back down to where I was staying over at the below the rim village where the ranger residence was, and didn't tell too many people about that. That's another one of those things where it just doesn't add up, and it makes you nervous, and you're like, well, better run away and play than and live another day. So
you know, if you could travel back to October the 20th, 1967, what would the first question you would ask Roger?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Where's Patty? Did you mark Patty's footprints off anchor points so we can find him again? That'd be one of the questions I would ask. And I did get a chance to talk to Bob Gimlin, and I asked him some very similar questions to Bob Gimlin.
Yeah,
Like when I was, this is years ago when I got involved with the BFRO, and I got to meet him for the first time in 2003. And I had some questions for him around the campfire, and like, how come you guys turned around? How did you get stuck? What were you thinking? What'd you smell? All those questions that people ask him over and over again, and they're very similar to the ones that you find written down now. And any other, the more I do research, the more I have other questions to ask. And I guess I go back to measurements, exactly how far things would have been. It's like, I mean, like, how far were you when you first saw it? I mean, how far did you run down that
yeah,
graded gravel road
yeah,
before you crossed the creek? Because a lot of people assume that when Roger's on his horse and they got spooked and he laid his horse down and he bent the stirrup and got his foot stuck and had to get his foot loose. Then he had to grab the camera from the saddlebag. Then he had to let his horse go. Then he had to look for the creature. Then he had to run and close the distance so she could be in focus. Then he had to turn on the camera while he's doing this. I found a large stump 100 feet below where the alleged frame. Bill Munns put alleged frame number one that Roger first started filming.
right.
It's 100 feet to the stump that nobody talks about. That's downstream
Oh,
on the
bloody
shore.
hell.
And according to Bob Titmus's his sketch, he draws this large stump with a log extension on it. But the stump that's there has no log extension on it, but you can see where it was cut, and it's deteriorating, and it's huge. It's the size of a small room, like small, like described by Roger or Bob, who talks about that size.
Yeah,
And it's there. It's surrounded by vine maples right now. And at the time, the creek itself, I got to touch my screen or it's gonna go blank on me. Yeah, well, looking at the that location, it's right where the creek makes a bend. So in theory, one could be something could be there, and you can be on horseback, and you can be surprised because the creek makes another turn there, and so that fits
ah,
in. And I also found a piece of rebar just about 37 feet from that, pushed into the ground. And the legend has it that Rene DeHinden put rebar in different locations while he was doing his investigations. We found a piece of rebar a half mile up from 12 and 13 Bridge, where, according to Barbara Wasson, that's where the alleged camp was, where they camped. And there's a piece of rebar there. It's gone now, but it was there when we found it. And there was that piece of rebar, as I just mentioned, near that stump, about 37 feet away from that big old stump. Now, if you go back in time, Roger and Bob are walking their horses on a graded roadbed, which is left behind in 64, high water mark with sand and silt. And for the next 2 years after 64, they went up there to salvage log a lot of the washed out logs and stuff. So you could drive that graded road even right to where Roger and Bob had their sighting, right to there. You could drive on that. It was a graded
yeah,
road. So they're riding the horses on that. And so that's a certain distance. Then you have the creek, which is not 10 feet down as it is now, according to the high sandbar. It was more like maybe 3 feet-ish from that section there. And then that where that area is, there's that log debris there, and it could very well be the location where it all took place. So the reason I say that is I spend many a time sitting on my second opening, looking over that place, having my snacks, visualizing what they would have gone through, where it would have started, where they would have been, how it would have happened. And after a while, you start seeing it in your head. You start putting it all together. I don't see hundreds of Bigfoots hiding in the bushes in frame 52 like somebody does, but he's passed by now. But I can visualize that. And then the thing is, how much time does it take to cover over being spooked, controlling your horse, laying your horse down, getting your foot unstuck,
Yeah.
flipping open your camera, your saddlebag, pulling your camera out, letting your horse go, climbing to your feet now that you're injured, climbing to your feet, looking for Patty, trying to close the distance to Patty, and then when she makes her cut a certain way, you have to cut across the creek to close the thing because he starts filming just before he cuts across the creek because he's got this like you can see the earlier frames on the left, and
Yeah.
so you start piecing it all together. Like in those earlier frames, I can see where the creek is. It's on the back side of that one thing there because it's just a sandbar, and you can see where maybe that's where the creek really is, and he hasn't crossed it at that point with the earlier frames. But anyhow, we're speculating by that. But you're looking at that, trying to piece it all together. After a while, you start getting a visual picture of kind of how everything's going down there.
Right.
Yeah, so that would be one of the big questions I would ask. Uh, how long? And I would like to be standing there with him and asking him these questions because your best memory comes when you're standing there.
Of course it is. Yeah. Um, if someone gave you unlimited funding for one final Bluff Creek expedition, what would you do?
Oh, well, there's a whole creek drainage that people don't go up. It's called Bluff Creek. There's always stories up like towards Scorpion Creek, which we've hiked up to Scorpion Creek. It's a mile above the film site. And we hiked a mile past that to the forks where the main fork and the North Fork branch off. I would love to go up those drainages one by one and see what's up all those drainages there of that whole watershed area. That'd be one of the things. Yeah, and another one, there's other wild areas there that go way into the wilderness, the Siskiyou Wilderness. It'd be nice to spend some time in the Siskiyou Wilderness, just seeing, feeling, hearing, checking those places out. It's a pretty wild place. Nobody's been everywhere, and of course, I do have a home to come back to. I don't want to spend my whole life. I'm getting older now. I don't want to be, I don't want to parachute in, or be hella drop, stay boat in somewhere. But it'd be neat to look at things and spend a little more time listening and looking around because one of the things people miss is the evidence. It's like tracks or hair samples or sounds, and we're doing that now. I mean, we got guys in the group have recorders going 24/7, and we have drones with thermal units on them. Members that show up.
Drones now, yeah.
Yeah, they fly over and they
Yeah.
run the therms on them, and these guys know what they're doing with it. Like I'll put a plug in for Barcatino. He's able to invest into these camera traps that have thermal. They don't put out the signals that electronic cameras do. They're thermal units, and they're picking up a lot of good wildlife activity. And their cameras are hidden well, and they also put them in metal boxes to keep the electronics from being putting out signals. It's an attempt at it, and they've got some interesting stuff coming in. It's a relatively new project, but that would be great to be able to deploy a lot of that equipment in places that don't get much action and see
Exactly.
what's out there. But there's another theory on sightings that if you show up at your campsite and behave like you normally did, you would be a draw for something that's curious to see what you're up to. And maybe it's sometimes hanging at camp and running all your devices around your locations might be more successful than tromping through the woods where every animal around's telling everybody you're on your way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What's next for you? Are there more mysteries you are planning to investigate?
Well, I kind of got the writing bug. I've got a bunch of old books that they're not old. They're 25 years old. They're my silver anniversary. I've rewritten. One of them is already out there called the Bigfoot Mystery. I rewritten it I wrote 25 years ago. So I wanted to redo it, fix some of the grammar. I wanted to, make it a little more fun. And I was doing that to do audiobooks. So I can do audiobooks, make them available for audiobooks. And the Bigfoot trilogy, there's three of them. There's Yeti or Not, Here We Come, and then there's Operation Redwood Quest.
Oh yeah.
So I've rewritten the Yeti or Not already. I've started the process for Operation Redwood Quest. I just have to finish the cover design, the new cover, and I got other book projects I'm working on too. So updating my old books, because you can't really get, well, they're hard to get these days. They're print on demand, and they're difficult to get sometimes. So I was going through Amazon because I can dictate my price for the books within reason, and then I can actually have them in a box with me and sell them, because the price of the older books are so expensive. It's hard for me to purchase and sell them myself. And so, and
Yeah.
I'm still I love writing, and I got a lot of creative stories in them, and that's one thing I keep so busy with. And now that I'm not officially retired, but I think I would like to spend a little more time just sitting around and listening than running up and down, riding my bike everywhere like I used to do. So get a nice little rocking chair somewhere, and in the
Oh
shade.
my God.
No, I like to still stay active and see things, because
Yeah, but
it's,
you still like to go out there, don't you?
oh yeah, I miss it. It's like I just got back probably a week ago, and I spent about 5 days. I got my annual flat tire. You got to get a flat tire when you drive in the Bluff Creek area.
Oh God, yeah.
Driving too fast, not avoiding the rocks. Got to pay attention to where you're going. Bring a tire fix kit, because you can fix your own tire out in the boonies unless you rip the sidewall out. But then you're supposed to have an actual spare tire that you can put on for that
Gotcha.
emergencies.
Yes.
Bring plenty of water, lots of food, and let people know where you're at. And don't take chances. Like both times I was by myself and I sold those stories to you. That what if it was a very aggressive animal and I'm by myself,
Oh,
and I had plenty of time to adjust and give it space, and I chose not to. So we have to be smart about it, and we have to be aware of our surroundings, and we can't just be
right, right,
foolhardy.
exactly. You've got to think
Yeah.
about number one, yourself.
Yeah, I'll tell the other quick story about that too. Is when I was doing the up and down that river canyon, I walked the river canyon by myself. It's like 3 miles in, 3 miles out. And when I was doing my research, it'd be late in the day. I'd meet with the guys, or we'd hike together, or they would drive down, and I walk back with the canyon. One time walking back, it was just past the MK Davis area, past the big slide area where it makes the turn. And I remember walking along. I was just going to cross the creek, and I hear women talking and laughing. And I'm like, what? Here? So yeah, I yelled over there, and it got quiet. And so I walked across the creek to go see what was going on.
You've gone off. Sound's gone down. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Your sound's gone. No sound. Can't hear you. Anyway, we've lost sound for some unknown reason. So I can't hear Robert talking. I don't know if he can hear me or not. No. Oh, my God. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Thank you to everybody in the chat room. Thank you very much. Thank you to Robert for being here with us today. Good night and God bless. My guest on Friday is Karen Frey. She's a psychic medium. She's on Friday, the 24th of July. This Friday coming. So thank you again. I will go in there a minute. End the program.